This is Bluebook Digital SAT 8 Math Module 2. Which equation has the same solution as the given equation? Well, 4x would equal 12, so x is 3. Definitely not A. Not 4 times 3 is that. It's 4 times 3 is 12, of course. Oh, which is, of course, just the first step there. Total cost f of x in dollars to lease a car for 36 months from a particular car dealership is given by f of x equals 36x plus 1,000, where x is the monthly payment, in dollars. What is the total cost to lease a car where the monthly payment is 400? Well, it's of course just plugging in 400 as x, but even if you weren't quite sure about how to do it on the calculator, you could get Desmos to easily help you using the table. So you go here and table, and if you put in 400, it tells you 15,400, which is the answer. If the graph of that is shifted down 5 units in the xy plane, what is the y-intercept of the resulting graph? Well, I would recommend switching all lines to be in slope-intercept form if they're not already. So I'm going to carefully recopy this by putting this on the other side. And then, of course, you divide everything by 33 to put it in slope-intercept form. And I believe that is, just 9. And then if you were to graph this, this would have a y-intercept of 0, 9 and be sloping downward. Shifted down 5, this is of course 0, 4. The function f is defined as that. What is the y-intercept of the graph of the function in the xy plane? Well, the y-intercept is simply what you get when you put in 0 as x, which is obviously just -2. So 0, -2. The graph shows the relation between the number of shares of stock from company A, x, and the number of shares of stock from company B, y, that Simone can purchase. Which equation could represent this relationship? So they always have a couple of grid points. And by grid points, I mean where it goes through an exact or very, very close to an exact grid corner. I'm going to say that this goes through 30, 20 and also through maybe 45, 10. You could have used the endpoints also, but there's a clever way to get Desmos to help you with this that I think is extremely beneficial, is that you can give it values and make the calculator do the regression for you. So if you go to a table and you put in 30, 20, and then you also put in 45, 10, and you hit this thing right here, add regression, it defaults to a linear regression. So it tells you that you're talking about the line -2/3 x plus 40. And then if you really wanted to, you could recopy that as a function and plug in another value. I think that's not what's being asked right here, so I'm going to close this. So -2/3 x plus 40. Okay. So it's definitely not A as in apple or C as in cat. And then it looks like if you wanted to check that it's B as in boy, well, if I were to put this on the other side and set it equal to 40, and then multiply the entire expression by 12, you'd have 8x plus 12y equals 480. Okay, that's a system. The solution to the given system of equations is x, y. What is the value of 17/2 x plus 18y? But notice that in this case, if you simply subtract the bottom expression in place from the top expression, it collapses to be something basic. So 7/2 minus 5/2 is 2/2, which is 1. So it collapses all the way to just this plus nothing. So 0y, I'm going to say, is 2. So x itself is 2. And then you could put that piece of knowledge back into either equation. So for example, in the bottom equation, that now gets you to here, and that's a 5 plus 6y being 23. So 6y is 18, so y is 3. And then the thing in question, 17/2 x, so 17/2 of 2 plus 18 times 3 is just 17 plus 54 is 71. F of x equals that. The function f of given is given. Which table of values represents y equals f of x minus 3? This is actually probably best achieved on Desmos. Just be careful to use an extra parentheses and don't use a bracket. If you use a hard bracket like that, it interprets that as a list comprehension, as if you were in Python or programming. I made that mistake a little while ago. So I'm going to do this, but then put an extra parens just to be crystal clear, and then minus 3, and then make a table. Now it automatically lists it from -2 to +2 as x, but you can just insert the values that you want right here. So -6 makes -3, and -5 makes -3. It looks like it's b as in boy, right? -6 is -3, so this is gone, and this is gone, and -5 is also -3, sure. And then 4 is -3, sure, which is b as in boy. For the function q, the value of q of x decreases by 45% for every increase in the value of x by 1. If q of 0 equals 14, which equation defines q? Decreasing by 45% is the same as multiplying by 0.55, right? Because 100 minus 45 is like $1 taking away 45 cents. You're left with 55 cents. So again, decreasing by 45% is multiplying by 0.55. So it seems like it's c as in cat. And then q of 0, yeah, if you put in 0 as x, the exponent, 0.55 to the 0 is 1, gives you 14. A submersible device is used for ocean research. The function that gives the depth below the surface of the ocean in meters of the submersible device x minutes after collecting a sample where x is greater than 0. How many minutes after collecting the sample did it take for the submersible device to reach the surface of the ocean? This is actually simpler than you think it is. And I could just say the answer, but let's do it the long graphical way first, because even if you didn't really know how to manipulate it on Desmos, you could just type it in point blank the way it's written. So -1/55 times the quantity x plus 19 times the quantity x minus 35. And just look at the picture. So it submerses from the surface at -19, and then collecting a sample where x is greater than 0. So the function gives the depth below the surface x minutes after collecting a sample where x is greater than 0. How many minutes after collecting the sample did it take for the submersible device to reach the surface of the ocean? Well, the answer just is the positive x-intercept. The answer just is 35, because y equaling 0 is defined as the surface level of the ocean in this case. Cube has an edge length of 68. A solid sphere with a radius of 34 inches is inside the cube, such that the sphere touches the center of each face of the cube. To the nearest cubic inch, what is the volume of the space in the cube not taken up by the sphere? So it's kind of hard to draw this on a flat piece of paper, but I'm going to do my best, bearing in mind I have the advantage of an automatically correcting pen in every possible color over here because I'm using a trackpad. So putting a sphere inside a cube, it touches in the middle of all 6 faces. The sphere inside the cube looks something like this, and it touches here, 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 and here. Although again, it's kind of hard to draw a perfect picture of it. Cube having edge length of 68, so the volume of the cube is of course just 68 times 68 times 68. Now the volume of a sphere, it tells you in the reference sheet. So the formula for the volume of a sphere is 4/3 pi times radius cubed. So if I think of this as 4/3 pi times the radius, but of course the radius of the sphere is half the edge length of the cube. So the radius is 34. So this goes here. And then the answer to the volume outside is, of course, just the cube minus the sphere, which I'm going to write like this and then use these parens for clarity's sake. 68 to the 3. These are big numbers, right? So 314,000 taking away 164,000 is 149,796. Notice that I'm using a TI-83 in addition to the Desmos. I think having both is really helpful. Sometimes graphing on the screen using Desmos is faster. I find that for arithmetic itself, I'm much quicker using my actual fingers on the calculator. What is the sum of the solutions? Okay, again, you could do this on Desmos, or you could do it the abstract way, knowing the rules about a quadratic. Let's do it on Desmos first. So if you actually set them equal, which is not what I would recommend writing them as two separate functions, which gives you a more visually intuitive explanation of what's going on. So there's f of x, and then g of x being 4x times the quantity x minus 7. And let's look at this a little bit bigger. And I might adjust the window so you can see this more clearly, to go maybe just from negative 10 to positive 20. Yeah, that should be better. So I see them intersecting at negative 2 2/3, right? So, I'm sorry, positive 2 2/3. So 8/3 and 7. 8/3 and 7. So the sum of the solutions should be 8/3 plus 21/3 is 29/3. Notice that you could have done this the more helpful way in my mind, which is to know the more abstract rules about the facts of a quadratic. So if I do the distribution, right, x squared plus x minus 56 equals 4x squared minus 28x. I'm going to make it a true quadratic by having one side be 0 and put everything else on the other side. So this becomes 3x squared. Oh, sorry, I missed an x right there, of course. That's 4x squared minus 28x. This becomes 3x squared minus 29x minus 56. Then in this quadratic, or any quadratic, the sum of the roots is always negative b over a, which is just 29 over 3. Okay, y is less than 6x plus 2. Well, they almost always have answer choice A be the trick wrong answer. That's, of course, when y equals 6x plus 2. So let's eliminate it based on just the first row. Is 16 less than 6 times 3 plus 2? Yes. Yes. Is 24 less than 6 times 3 plus 2? No. So A and D are gone just based on the first row. Okay. Is 36 less than 6 times 5 plus 2, right? Is 36 less than 32? No. So it seems like it has to be C as in cat. Is 28 less than 32? Yes. And then is 40 less than 44? Yes. What is the diameter of the circle with that equation? So remember, for any circle, it's equals r squared on the right-hand side. So in general, this x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared describes a circle with center h comma k and radius r. So r is 4, which makes the diameter 8. In the given equation, c is a constant. The equation has exactly one solution. What is the value of c? There are a couple different ways to do this. I think probably for most people, making it a slider on Desmos is the most realistically quick, helpful way to do it. Let's do it that way first. So let's say it's f of x equals negative 9x squared plus 30x plus c. Yeah, and it offers to make a slider. Now you have to understand, having exactly one solution means that you just touch the x-axis at one spot, right? You have exactly one x-intercept. This is giving me, this doesn't give you enough freedom to move this around. So I think we need to adjust this to be more from, I don't know, negative 50 to positive 50, stepping by 1. And let's see what happens. So the answer is something like, actually, is it exactly negative 25? It looks like, yeah, it seems that negative 25 is the answer. Okay, now let's do this the other way. So in order for a parabola or a quadratic to have exactly one root, the discriminant has to equal 0. So remember, in the quadratic formula, when you write it the long way, the discriminant is what's in the radical. So if you think about it, if this itself is 0, then root of it is 0, which means there effectively is no plus or minus. It just collapses to be a single value. So b squared minus 4ac has to equal 0 for there to be exactly one x-intercept in a second degree polynomial. So here that would be 30 squared minus 4 times negative 9 times c, right? Because c equaling 0 is 900 plus 36c equaling 0. So negative 36c is 900, and c is this quotient, which is negative 25. In triangle XYZ, y is a right angle, the measure of z is 33 degrees, and the measure of xy is 26. So always draw the picture if it doesn't give you the picture. Triangle XYZ, y is the right angle, the measure of z is 33 degrees, and yz is 26. Now let's be formal using it the way you're supposed to do it, where the side across from the capital letter is the lowercase letter. So little x is 26, little z is the height of the triangle, and little y is the hypotenuse. K tan 33. The area is K tan 33. So in this picture, tan 33 degrees is z over 26. So z, which is the height, is 26 tan 33 degrees. Then the area of the triangle, being 1/2 base times height, is 1/2, and x is the base, and the height is z as in zebra, which is this. So it's 26 times 26 times 1/2, which is 338. So 338 tan 33 is what it says it is, which is K tan 33, which makes the answer 338. The regular price of a shirt at a store is $11.70. The sale price, I'm just going to write this piece at a time, right? So regular equals $11.70. Sale is 80% less than the regular price. The sale price of a shirt is 80% less than the regular price. So that's 11.7 times 0.2. This actually gives it that it's $2.34. And the sale price is 30% higher than the store's cost for their shirt. So if sale is 30% higher than store, that's sale is 1.3 times store. So 2.34 is 1.3 times store. So store, which is what they're asking about, is 1.8. Triangles ABC and DEF, B and E are both 27 degrees. ABC, and DEF. They're not necessarily similar unless it says they're similar or we have reason to believe by proving it, but B and E are both 27 degrees. C and F are 41 degrees. Which additional piece of information is sufficient to determine whether triangle ABC is congruent? Congruent. So not just similar, but congruent. So of course they're similar because the missing angle must be the same in both of them. This has to be 112 degrees in both of them. So of course you know that they're similar. But to prove that they're congruent, you would have to say that any pair of corresponding sides is the same. So for example, if AC was DF, then they'd have to be congruent. So answer choice A is the trick wrong answer. That's actually already known. Can't be that. BC and EF, yeah, that's the answer, right? Because if you know for a fact then that this is the same as this, then of course the triangles are congruent. Okay. Given system of equations R is a constant, if the system has no solution. So you have to understand that for a system of two lines to have no solution, the lines have to be parallel but not the exact same line. So I'm going to carefully rewrite the top equation in slope-intercept form. I'm going to put this on the left and then add the 72y to the right-hand side to get 102y. Then I'm going to flip it around to be closer to y equals mx plus b form and write this as, I assume that reduces, yeah, I hit math frac on the calculator to reduce this to 8/16 x minus 8/17 x minus 4/17, okay? And then if ry is negative 16x plus a sixth, divide the entire expression by r. So y is negative 16 over r x plus 1 over 6r, okay? And it tells you that it has no solution, which means the lines must be parallel. So it must be that must be the case that this is this. So 8/17 equaling negative 16 over r. Well, you can tell just looking at the fractions. You multiply by negative 2 on top and bottom. So r would be negative 34. You probably could have achieved this with a slider on Desmos, although it would have been a pain to copy everything in, and you could have achieved it with a slider, though. It would have taken a minute. Which of the following expression has a factor of x plus 2b, where b is a positive integer constant? So if there were no answer choices, there'd be no way to do this. If you're looking at the answer choices, x plus 2b is one of the factors. Then if the final term of the answer choice has to be a 14b, then the thing that goes right here has to be a 7, right? Because the last and the last in the FOIL is what gives you the 14b. And then if the first term is 3x squared, then the thing that goes right here has to be a 3x. And then it just has to be a plus and a plus, and it is what it is, right? So now let's do the FOIL. 3x squared plus 7x plus 6bx plus 14b. So 3x squared plus, and then I'm going to group the middle terms together like this as 7 plus 6b plus 14b. Now, from the answer choices, it tells you as a fact that b is a positive integer constant. So 7 plus 6b, but b is a positive integer. So think about the values of b. Let's make a little table here, right? The values of b, and then what you get when you do 7 plus 6b. b has to be a positive integer constant. So let's do the first few, right? So if b is 1, 7 plus 6 times 1 is 13, but that's not an answer choice. 7 plus 6 times 2 is 19. That's not an answer choice either. And then you keep counting up effectively by sixes, right? So that's 25, and then 31, and then 37, then you're still not there. And I think it's going to be, 43 and then 49. Yeah, and that's the one that works. It's a pretty tricky question, but you just have to write it out. The perimeter of an equilateral triangle is 624 centimeters. The perimeter of an equilateral triangle. That means that every side would be 208, right? The height of this triangle is k root 3. Well, I just remember having done this for years and years and years, that an equilateral, which is when they're all 60s, if you divide it down the middle, you get a 30, 60, 90. And that's how to do this question. So it's actually based on special right triangles. And if you didn't remember them perfectly, you could look at the reference. So on the reference card, this one, and I'm going to draw the reference card so that it's in the same orientation as this. It would have been, let me see if I can draw a decent picture here. It would have been, this being the 30 is x and x radical 3 and 2x. So in this case, 2x is 208. So x is 104. This is 104, and this is 104 radical 3. Let's go back to what the question was. The height of the triangle is k root 3. Yeah, the answer is 104. The two data sets of 23 integers each are summarized in the histograms shown. For each of the histograms, the first interval represents the frequency of integers greater than or equal to 10, but less than 20. Okay, the integer is greater than or equal to 10, but less than 20. So the biggest thing that's in this bucket right here is a 19. The second interval represents the frequency of integers greater than or equal to 20, but less than 30. So in this bucket, it's 20 through 29. Okay, what is the smallest possible difference between the mean of data set A and the mean of data set B? Well, it looks like they simply slid the entire block over one chunk on the column settings. So in order to minimize the difference of the mean, then each individual item would be minimized in its difference. So I think what would happen is, if in this column right here, these were all actually the number 20 itself, then all of those became 19s instead. Then in here, they would all be 19s. So instead of 3 times 20, you'd have 3 times 19. And then instead of 4 times 30, you would have 4 times 29. And instead of 7 times 40, you would have 7 times 39. And then lastly, instead of 9 times 50, you would have 9 times 49. And you would add those all up. But of course, every item is exactly 1 different, which means the mean would be 1 different. Table shows the results of a poll. A total of 803 voters selected at random were asked which candidate they would vote for in the upcoming election. According to the poll, if 6,424 people vote in the election, by how many votes would Angel Cruz be expected to win? By how many votes would Angel Cruz be expected to win? Not how many votes did that person get, but by how many would they win? So wouldn't it be, it's the fraction of the total, it's this fraction that person got for Angel out of everybody. That's how many votes Angel got. But then the margin by which she would win is her minus Terry, which is, of course, the other fraction. And then if you want to be clever, you can subtract the numerators in the left parts of the fractions and get that would be 163 803rds times this, which is 1304.